Hi, welcome back to The Basement. I'm Steve Lewis. A few episodes ago, I began looking at Beach Boy album covers as a sort of artifact in themselves and looking at the things that could be gleaned by reviewing how the Beach Boys are presented on their album covers. In that episode, we got up through Shutdown Volume 2, which was released in March of 1964. Today, I'd like to carry on with the next group of albums, beginning with the album that was released in July of 1964, the All Summer Long album. Now, this is the first album by the Beach Boys put together after the advent of Beatlemania in the US. And you can see a change in the artwork immediately. You've got all these little fun pictures, Beach Boys having a great time, Beach Boys as individuals, really. All healthy outdoor fun. You see Carl buried up to his neck in the sand here, which apparently was the height of fun in the 60s. The Monkees did it, Gidget, everybody apparently loved having their bodies buried up to the neck in sand in those days. It was a kick, I guess. Down here's a sort of a weird little, the one that is not outdoors seems to be a little picture of Dennis on a date at the movies. It's just kind of a weird little picture that I didn't notice for a long time. Not a bad cover. For the first time on the back cover, you get notes that are from the members of the band individually rather than from some anonymous Capitol Records publicist. Each one of the guys has a little paragraph that they've written and signed, mainly talking about how fast-paced and busy their lives are and how they, live for fun and how much they appreciate their fans. Kind of the typical line of the mid-60s rock and roll star. But nice to see the Beach Boys represented as individuals, and I think it belies some of the influence that the Beatles were already having on the American rock scene. It also, for the first time, includes a little blurb that says, "Attention Beach Boy fans, here's the fan club address." And I don't know what you got when you wrote to this address. It doesn't say to send any money. It doesn't give any information, just it gives an address for the Beach Boys fan club. If anybody knows what you got if you wrote into that thing in 1964, 65, I'd love to know what the Beach Boy fan club package looked like or what you got in return if you wrote to that address. Now, I'm purposely going to omit the next two releases, which is Beach Boy Concert and the Beach Boy Christmas album. They're kind of different promotionally. They serve a different purpose. The promotional approach is different from a regular studio album. So we'll talk about those separately from this continuum of Beach Boy studio releases. The next sort of normal Beach Boy album release came in March of 1965 with the release of the Today album, which is a great album, particularly the second side. This was a big step forward in the Beach Boys canon. The cover could have been great. Once again, they've wasted a lot of space with this brown area. I don't know why they chose to do that rather than give us the full picture, because there is more to this photo. They're actually sitting on a diving board. And the picture, for some reason, has been printed backwards. Somebody decided it looked better as a mirror image. I have no idea why. Now, the back cover has liner notes by Dick Clark. He just wishes them success and, talks about how great the band is and all this stuff. Whatever else you might say about Dick Clark, he didn't have a particularly deep or insightful approach when it came to promoting bands. If you watch any of his interviews on American Bandstand, as soon as anybody tries to say anything that is remotely interesting or insightful, he steers it right back to comic put-downs and goofing around. So there's not a lot insightful, of course, in Dick Clark's liner notes here. I'm sure he was paid handsomely for his notes. Also, the Beach Boys had name-checked him on their earlier album, All Summer Long, in the song Do You Remember, that Dick Clark brought rock and roll to life, according to Brian Wilson. So I'm sure Dick Clark had good feelings about the Beach Boys because of that, apart from anything else. The back cover sports the legend across the top, a program of big Beach Boy favorites, plus some great new Brian Wilson songs. So you see that they're looking at Brian Wilson as a writer. This is maybe the beginning of the Brian Wilson is a musical genius thing that Derek Taylor when he became their publicist in 1966, would really exploit and really uses the focus in promoting the Beach Boys. But Brian Wilson's songwriting gets basically a headline on the back cover. Once again, the back cover contains the address for the Beach Boys fan club. But instead of saying for information regarding the Beach Boys fan club, write to, it just says, hey, for information. And it's a kind of a sign that they're getting a little hipper, things are loosening up, people are beginning to be more informal. Just a little sign of the times there in the way they approached getting your attention for the Beach Boys fan club. The next Beach Boy album release came only 4 months later in July of 1965 with the album Summer Days and Summer Nights. Now, it's amazing to take in how quickly the Beach Boys were turning out classic records at this point. I mean, they were doing 3-4 albums a year, all with just terrific music on it, and Brian Wilson's songwriting and recording and production skills were growing almost exponentially. This album contains California Girls, among other hits. It was considered something of a step backward at the time. Beach Boys today had kind of held together as an album. We were beginning to get into the era where people were thinking of albums as a complete work, not just a collection of songs. And this is more a collection of songs. Not all of them memorable, but there's some really terrific stuff on here. I also just love the way the title is punctuated. It's Summer Days, and then in parentheses with 2 exclamation points, and Summer Nights. Really cool mid-60s punctuation. I think that's really neat. The front cover, of course, you get only 4 Beach Boys. On the back cover, Al Jardine explains that he was down with the flu after working very hard and couldn't make the boat. Bruce Johnston, who had just recently become a touring member of the band, was on the boat, but he could not appear because he was still under contract to Columbia Records. There are photos of Bruce on the boat, would have made a cool cover, but he was not allowed to appear for contractual reasons. You certainly can hear his voice very prominently in California Girls, which was the first Beach Boy record that he performed on, and you hear his voice prominently quite often after this. Also on the back cover, you've got, again, individual statements from each member of the band. You've got Carl giving a very sincere thanks to the fans, which kind of became one of Carl's roles in the band. All through the 70s and 80s, into the 90s, Carl was the one who at the end of a Beach Boy concert would thank the fans very, very sincerely for supporting the band and having come out to the show. You kind of see the beginnings of that here. You also have ads for the Beach Boys back catalog. Album covers were not yet considered to be a separate work of art. They were still a place to sell things and to have advertising space. Interestingly, the track listing for the first time also includes who's singing lead vocals on each song. Again, beginning to represent the Beach Boys as individuals rather than just one collective unit. Now, I like the front cover. They use the space well. It's a nice big color picture. It's the kind of thing I like to see. Be nice if all the Beach Boys were there instead of just 4 of them. The other thing is I've heard that at least some of them, maybe all of them, got violently seasick during this album cover shoot. And I've had the experience of being on a small sailboat like this off the coast of Southern California. And I can tell you, I wanted nothing but to get off that boat because I was violently sick. So the impact of the cover is a little bit diminished for me because every time I see it, I think about being seasick. Anyway, that's just me. So that's where we'll leave it with Beach Boy album covers for now. The next few albums have a lot more to talk about, a lot more backstory, and a lot more to them. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.